The job posting said solitude and stunning views. What it didn't mention was the list of rules I found taped under the desk on my first day. The first 7 were weird, but it was the last one, written in shaky, hurried letters, that made my blood run cold. It mimics the people you miss the most. Do not let it in. My hand trembled as I peeled the yellowed, sweat-stained piece of paper from the rough-hewn wood. For a moment, the only sound was the lonely whistle of the wind whipping around the lookout tower, 100 feet above a sea of pine and fir. I'd wanted to escape, to run so far away from my life that the ghost of my brother's laughter couldn't follow me. 2 months in the Flathead National Forest, watching for smoke, seemed like the perfect prescription. No people, no pitying looks, no need to explain the hollowed-out feeling in my chest. Just me, the sky, and a million acres of trees. The tower was rustic. A single square room, maybe 15 by 15, with glass windows on all 4 sides, perched on stilts like some kind of skeletal metal giant. There was a cot, a small propane stove, a desk with a radio that crackled with static, and a trapdoor in the floor leading to the god-awful stairs. It was perfect. A steel and glass cage to keep the world out and my memories in. My supervisor, a gruff but kind man named Frank, had dropped me off an hour ago. "It gets quiet up here, Zoe," he'd warned, his eyes lingering on my face a little too long, as if trying to gauge if I was the type to crack. "The last guy, well, he left in a hurry. Said the quiet was too loud for him." Now, holding this list, I wondered if loud quiet was a euphemism for something else entirely. I smoothed the paper out on the desk, the handwriting a frantic scrawl, the ink bleeding in places as if the writer had been sweating or crying. The rules for the tower. 1. Keep the trapdoor locked after sundown. No exceptions. 2. The radio picks up more than the ranger station. Don't trust any voice you don't recognize, especially the ones that whisper. 3. Never use the binoculars on the valley after dark. You won't like what you see looking back. 4. If you hear your name called from the trees, don't answer. 5. It hates the smell of pine. Keep the incense burner going all night. There's a crate of it under the cot. 6. Some nights you'll hear tapping on the glass. 1 tap for each year you've been alive. Don't acknowledge it. It's just counting. 7. If you wake up and all the windows are fogged over from the inside, don't wipe them. Stay on your cot and don't make a sound until the sun is fully up. 8. It mimics the people you miss the most. Do not let it in. I read the list 3 times. It had to be a joke, some hazing ritual for the new lookout. The last guy, the one who left in a hurry, was probably having a good laugh at my expense right now, sitting in a bar somewhere. I snorted, a dry, humorless sound that was swallowed by the immense silence of the forest. Still, an involuntary shiver traced a path down my spine. It was creepy, I'd give him that. Creative. He'd almost gotten me. The first few days were bliss. The kind of profound, soul-cleansing solitude I'd craved. I fell into a routine. Wake at dawn, scan the horizon, log the weather, read, cook, sleep. The sky was a canvas of impossible blues and fiery sunsets. The silence wasn't loud, it was peaceful. I felt the tight knot of grief in my chest begin to loosen, just a little. I thought about the list sometimes, usually when the sun dipped below the jagged peaks and plunged the world into an inky, star-dusted blackness. I made sure to lock the trapdoor, but that was just common sense. I found the crate of pine incense sticks and burned one the second night because I liked the smell. It reminded me of Christmas with my family, back when family was a whole concept. I completely forgot about Rule #3. It was the 5th night. A full moon hung in the sky like a celestial spotlight, bathing the valley in a silvery, ethereal glow. It was beautiful, too beautiful to ignore. I was restless, my mind replaying the accident again, the screech of tires, the shattering glass, my brother Liam's name, a silent scream on my lips. I needed a distraction. I picked up the heavy-duty binoculars, the ones Frank said could spot a deer from 5 miles away, and focused them on the valley floor. The rule, when it came back to me, was a faint whisper in the back of my mind. Never use the binoculars on the valley after dark. I hesitated for a second, then shook my head. It's a prank, Zoe. You're being ridiculous. I swept the powerful lenses across the landscape. The moonlight transformed the familiar shapes of trees and rocks into a strange, alien world. Everything was still, bathed in silver and shadow. I scanned from left to right, a slow, methodical sweep. And then I saw it. Or rather, I saw them. In a small, unnatural clearing directly below the tower, figures were moving. They weren't animals. They were tall and unnaturally thin, their limbs too long, their movements jerky and wrong, like marionettes with a drunk puppeteer. I couldn't make out any features, just these spindly, dark silhouettes moving in a shambling, silent procession. My heart hammered against my ribs. It had to be a trick of the light, shadows playing games with my tired eyes. I kept watching, my hands gripping the binoculars so tightly my knuckles turned white. One of the figures stopped. It stood perfectly still for a moment before its head tilted back, way too far back. Even from this distance, I felt, more than saw, that it was looking right at me. Right up at my window in the sky. A cold, primal fear, colder than any mountain wind, washed over me. I ripped the binoculars from my eyes and stumbled back from the window, my breath catching in a choked sob. My gaze fell on the list of rules, still sitting on the corner of the desk. You won't like what you see looking back. For the next 2 days, I lived in a state of high alert anxiety, my carefully constructed peace shattered. I did my job on autopilot, my eyes constantly straying to the clearing below, which in the harsh light of day looked completely ordinary. There were no tracks, no signs of disturbance, just trees and rocks. I told myself it was a hallucination, a waking nightmare brought on by grief and isolation. I had to believe that, because the alternative was unthinkable. I was a practical person. I believed in things I could see and touch, in scientific explanations and rational thought. Spindly shadow people who could stare up 100-foot tower in the dead of night didn't fit into my worldview. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The tower no longer felt like a sanctuary, it felt like a cage, a fishbowl suspended over something ancient and malevolent. I started triple-checking the lock on the trapdoor. I kept the pine incense burning constantly, the thick, cloying smoke filling the small cabin until my eyes watered. The smell no longer reminded me of Christmas, it smelled like fear. The 7th night, it was rule #4. I was trying to read, but the words kept blurring together. The wind was howling, a mournful sound that seemed to snake its way through the cracks in the window frames. And then, carried on that wind, I heard it. Zoe. It was faint, almost lost in the gale, but it was unmistakable. My name. My blood went to ice. I scrambled to the north-facing window, peering down into the impenetrable darkness. The forest was a churning sea of black. Zoe, help me. This time it was clearer, and the voice my heart stopped. It was Liam. It was my brother's voice, laced with a panic I hadn't heard since the night he died. I slapped my hands over my mouth to stifle a scream. It couldn't be. It was impossible. My mind was breaking. This is what Frank meant. The quiet gets too loud. It was just my grief, manifesting in the most cruel way imaginable. Please, Zoe. I'm lost. I'm scared. Tears streamed down my face. Every instinct, every fiber of my being, screamed at me to answer, to call his name, to run down those stairs and find him. He sounded so real, so terrified. My hand went to the radio, then recoiled. Don't trust any voice you don't recognize. But I recognized this one. I knew it better than my own. I stumbled back to the desk, my eyes finding the frantic scrawl of rule #4. If you hear your name called from the trees, don't answer. It was a choice. My rational mind, what was left of it, warring with a raw, gaping wound of my grief. What if it was him? Some miracle, some glitch in the universe. But the thing I saw through the binoculars wasn't a miracle. With a sob that tore through my throat, I crammed my knuckles into my mouth and bit down hard. I sank to the floor, my back against the cot, and squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't answer. I just sat there, shaking and crying, as my brother's voice called my name over and over from the darkness, each plea more desperate than the last, until it was finally swallowed by the wind. The next morning, I felt like a ghost. I hadn't slept. When the sun finally rose, the voice was gone. I spent the day in a daze, the encounter replaying in my mind. The logical part of me knew Liam was gone. But the voice, it had been perfect. It had his exact timbre, his particular way of saying my name. How? That afternoon, driven by a desperate need for answers, I decided to search the cabin. The guy before me, the one who left in a hurry, he couldn't have just written the rules. There had to be more. I looked everywhere. Under the mattress, in the small supply cupboard, inside the empty propane canisters. Finally, I found it. Tucked away in a loose floorboard beneath the cot was a small, leather-bound journal. His name was David. His entries started out much like my own experience: awe at the beauty, notes about the weather, complaints about the powdered eggs. But about a week in, the tone shifted. July 12th, saw something strange in the valley tonight. Looked like people dancing, but they were wrong. Long. Like the shadows at dusk, got up and walked away. July 15th, heard a woman calling for help. Sounded just like my ex-wife, Sarah. Radioed it in, but dispatch said the area was empty. They think I'm losing it. The entries grew more erratic. He wrote about the tapping on the glass, 29 taps his age. He wrote about the whispering on the radio, about waking up to find the windows completely fogged over, a thick, greasy film on the inside. He described the same things the list warned about, but in terrifying detail. He wasn't pranking me. He was trying to warn me. I flipped to the last entry, dated the day before I arrived. The handwriting was almost illegible. It knows what I want. It knows I miss her. It came to the door last night. It looked like her. Same smile, same dress she wore on our first date. It said it was cold and asked to come in. I almost opened it. God help me, I almost did. But I remembered the rule. It mimics. It's not her. It's not real. I have to get out of here. I can't take another night. I'm leaving the rules. Maybe the next person will be stronger than me. Don't let it in. Whatever you do, do not let it in. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just in my head. It was real. David had seen it, heard it, and it had almost gotten him. And the last rule, the most terrifying one, was the only one I hadn't faced yet. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The thing in the woods wasn't just trying to scare me. It was hunting. It was patient. And it was learning what I missed the most. The journal changed everything. The battle was no longer just in my head. I had corroboration. I wasn't going crazy. But that knowledge was a cold comfort because it meant the danger was real. The rules weren't a prank, they were a survival guide. I became a zealot, a devout follower of David's paranoid gospel. I timed my activities around sundown, making sure the trapdoor was bolted, the incense lit, and my back was turned to the windows as darkness fell. Every creak of the tower, every rustle in the trees, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, and when I did drift off, my dreams were filled with long, spindly limbs and my brother's pleading voice. The tapping started a week later. It was a clear, moonless night. I was huddled on the cot, trying to read the same page for the 10th time, when a sharp tap sounded against the eastern window. I froze. A few seconds passed. Tap dot. Then another dot. Tap dot. It continued, a slow, deliberate rhythm. I found myself counting under my breath, my heart pounding in time with the impacts. It stopped at 24. My age. David wasn't exaggerating. It's just counting. The phrase echoed in my mind. Counting what? The years I'd lived? Or the years it had been watching, waiting? I didn't move a muscle until the first rays of dawn painted the sky, my entire body rigid with fear. The psychological toll was immense. The isolation I'd once craved had become a form of torture. I felt like a specimen under a microscope. Days were for dread, nights were for terror. I tried the radio several times, desperate for a human voice, but all I got was static that seemed to coalesce into faint, sibilant whispers just at the edge of hearing. SSS Suoi. I would slam the handset down, my hands shaking. I was getting worn down, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. And it knew. It happened on what I think was my 30th day in the tower. A thick, soupy fog had rolled in overnight, blanketing the entire forest and reducing visibility to near zero. I woke up shivering, not from the cold, but from a deep, instinctual dread. And then I saw it. All four walls of glass were completely opaque, covered in a thick layer of condensation. From the inside. Rule #7. If you wake up and all the windows are fogged over from the inside, don't wipe them. Stay on your cot and don't make a sound until the sun is fully up. My breath hitched. I could feel it. A presence. It was outside. It was close. The air in the cabin was heavy, still, and unnaturally cold. I didn't dare move. I lay there on the cot, my body ramrod straight, staring up at the ceiling and listening. For what, I didn't know. An hour passed. Then two. The silence was absolute, more terrifying than any noise. Then, I saw the line. A single, thin streak appearing in the condensation on the windowpane nearest me. Someone or something was drawing on the glass. From the outside. Slowly, a letter took shape. L. Then an I. An A. An M. Liam. My brother's name. A guttural sob escaped my lips before I could stop it. I clapped my hand over my mouth, my eyes wide with terror. I had made a sound. The drawing stopped. There was a long, terrible pause. And then, a voice right next to the glass, so close it sounded like it was in the room with me. It wasn't shouting, just a soft, conversational whisper. I know you're in there, Zoe. It was Liam's voice. Not the panicked, distant cries from the trees, but his actual voice. Calm, gentle, the way he spoke when he was trying to comfort me. It's me. I don't know how, but I'm here. Please open the door. It's so cold out here. I was paralyzed. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I knew the rule. I knew what David had written. It mimics. But hearing that voice, so close, so real, it was tearing me apart. All I wanted in the world was to see my brother again, to hug him, to tell him I was sorry. And he was right there, just a few feet away. Slowly, as if in a trance, my feet touched the cold wooden floor. I took a step toward the window, my hand outstretched. I just wanted to wipe a small circle just to see his face. To see if it was really him. That's it, so. Just let me in, the voice coaxed, full of love and warmth. I miss you. My fingers were inches from the fogged glass when my gaze caught the list of rules, pinned to the wall above the desk. David's frantic scrawl seemed to scream at me from the page. Do not let it in. The spell broke. With a gasp, I scrambled back to the cot, pulling the thin blanket up to my chin like a child hiding from monsters. I squeezed my eyes shut and began to pray, to bargain with a god I hadn't spoken to in years. The voice outside kept talking, its tone shifting from gentle coaxing to hurt confusion, and finally, to something else. Something cold and hard and angry. The temperature in the room plummeted. The whispering stopped. The sun must have risen above the fog because a sliver of light pierced the gloom. The condensation on the windows began to recede, starting from the top. As the glass cleared, my eyes were fixed on the clearing below. The spindly figures were there again, dozens of them, all standing perfectly still in the fog, their heads tilted up towards me. They were watching. And as the last of the condensation evaporated from the window where Liam's name had been written, I saw the marks left behind. They weren't fingerprints. They were long, deep scratches in the surface of the glass, as if made by claws of stone or bone. That was my lowest point. The moment the line between hope and horror was irrevocably erased. The thing outside wasn't just mimicking Liam, it was using my grief as a weapon, twisting my love for him into a key to unlock the door. Huddled on that cot, I felt a new emotion eclipse the fear and sorrow, rage. A cold, hard anger at this thing that dared to wear my brother's face and speak with his voice. It wanted a fight? Fine. It would get one. I spent the next few days preparing for a siege. I read David's journal from cover to cover, absorbing every detail, every terrified observation. He mentioned the entity seemed to dislike sudden, loud noises and bright, flashing lights. He'd also written the strange, half-finished thought in the margins: fire hates smoke but not pine. It seemed like a dead end, but I filed it away. I created a fortress of solitude. I took the small emergency flare gun from the supply kit and kept it on the desk. I found a powerful air horn that was meant to scare off bears and placed it by the trapdoor. I took the small mirror from my toiletry bag and set it up so I could see the trapdoor from my cot without having to sit up. I was no longer a victim waiting for the next rule to be tested. I was a fighter, guarding my tiny scrap of metal and glass in the sky. The final confrontation came sooner than I expected. The radio had been forecasting a massive thunderstorm for days, and it hit with biblical fury on a Tuesday night. The wind shrieked, rattling the entire tower on its foundations. Rain lashed against the glass in horizontal sheets, and lightning lit up the sky every few seconds, revealing a world of violent, churning chaos. It was the perfect cover. The tapping started, but it wasn't the slow, methodical counting from before. It was a frantic, desperate banging on the glass, coming from all sides at once. The air horn barely made a dent in the cacophony of the storm. Then, above the roar of the wind, I heard the sound I'd been dreading. A heavy, rhythmic thump 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 against the trapdoor in the floor. It was trying to get in. My heart leaped into my throat. I grabbed the flare gun, my hands slick with sweat. The thumping grew louder, more violent. The thick wooden door shuddered in its frame. And then it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying than the noise. I held my breath, straining to hear over the storm. "Zoe, open up, honey. It's me." The voice came from the trapdoor. It was my mother, my living, breathing mother, who thought I was safely watching for fires miles away from any danger. It was her voice, filled with worry and fear. "Your father and I were so worried when we heard about the storm. We drove up to check on you. Our car broke down at the bottom of the hill. Please let me in. It's not safe out here." It was the most insidious trick yet. Liam was a ghost, a memory. But my mom was alive. My mind raced. Could it be them? Could they have been that worried, that reckless? No, it was impossible. Frank would have never let them through. The access road was gated. It mimics the people you miss the most. I didn't just miss Liam. In my self-imposed exile, I desperately missed my parents. I can't, Mom, I whispered, tears blurring my vision. Don't be silly, Zoe. Open the door. I can hear you. Are you all right? Her voice was a perfect imitation of maternal concern, and it was breaking my heart. The thumping resumed, harder this time. The lock on the trapdoor began to groan. Then I saw it. In the small mirror I'd propped up, I could see the trapdoor. A dark, thick liquid was starting to seep through the cracks around the edges, pooling on the floor. It wasn't water. It was too dark, too viscous. David's last, frantic note flashed in my mind. Do not let it in. He meant it literally. The lock splintered. The trapdoor buckled inwards. I knew I had seconds. My eyes darted around the room, landing on the propane stove and a small can of aerosol bug spray next to it. It was a stupid, insane idea born of sheer desperation. I scrambled for the can and the lighter. As the trapdoor burst open, I didn't look. I couldn't. I couldn't bear to see what was wearing my mother's face. I aimed the can downwards, flicked the lighter, and squeezed the nozzle. A ferocious jet of flame erupted from the can, a makeshift flamethrower. I sprayed it wildly into the opening of the trapdoor. A shriek tore through the air, a sound that was not human. It was a high, unearthly screech of pain and rage that vibrated through the very steel of the tower. The dark liquid on the floor sizzled and pulled back from the heat. I kept spraying, the roar of my pathetic weapon a counterpoint to the creature's screams. The can sputtered and died. The screeching stopped. I was left in the echoing silence, panting, the acrid smell of burnt chemicals and something else, something foul and organic, filling the air. Trembling, I crawled towards the opening. The stairs were empty. Whatever it was gone. I survived the rest of the night, and the rest of my 2-month contract. The entity never tried to get in again. The woods fell silent. The tapping, the voices, the figures in the valley, all of it stopped. It was as if my final act of defiance had convinced it I wasn't worth the effort. I was not the prey it was looking for. When Frank came to pick me up at the end of the summer, he took one look at my face, at the new lines etched around my eyes, and didn't ask any questions. As I packed my meager belongings, my hand fell on the worn piece of paper with the rules. I thought about throwing it away, about burning it. But then I thought of the next person who might take this job, looking for solitude and stunning views. I walked over to the desk and taped the list back where I had found it, on the underside. Then, I took out a pen and in my own shaky, hurried letters, I added one more line at the bottom. 9. If you have to fight, burn it. It fears the flame more than the pine. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.